Last week saw a report being published which showed the unclaimed funding for active travel projects to be €130 million.
Okay, so you may notice this was shot during the summer. I started making this video in August, but for whatever reason, procrastination, I got busy with other stuff, I never got around to finishing it. Last week, the figures for active travel funding for 2023 were released, so I thought it was quite relevant to release this now and reflect on how the unclaimed funds from 2021 have impacted the figures in 2023. So let me explain, or rather, past Patrick explain.
There was €309 million allocated to active travel projects in 2021. However, only €180 million was claimed by local councils. Cork City Council failed to use 11 million of the 30 million funding they were allocated. So this has led to Minister of Transport Eamon Ryan instructing local councils to come up with some quick wins and projects that can be fast-tracked in an effort to claim the funding. Should Cork City Council fail to find any projects, let me highlight a few for them.
Before I start, I want to say that these are all my personal opinions. I'm not an engineer or an architect, I don't have any qualifications in city planning, and I'm not involved in any cycling advocacy groups. I'm just a guy who cycles as his main form of transport and is interested in making the city a safer and more livable place.
Now, it is a bit difficult to say which projects can be quick wins, as unfortunately there is very rarely transport schemes that can be delivered quickly. A lot of the small projects I name could be part of larger schemes like Bus Connects or the City to Passage Greenway. They could be part of a scheme that's still in the early stages of a multi-year development, with these walking and cycling projects not being scheduled for a number of years. But that shouldn't mean these can't be done quickly and earlier than intended. So let's start off with quick cycle lane projects and areas that could provide more protection for cyclists. South Terrace is quite a wide road with 2 lanes for general traffic and 1 bus lane that can also be shared by cyclists. However, this serves a lot of bus routes for the east and south of the city. That volume of buses makes an even supposed safe lane a hostile one for cycling. There has been many calls recently from the Cork cycling community to protect the bike lane at the junction of South Terrace and George's Quay, which is very poorly designed. South Terrace is a common route for cyclists coming into the city and has ample space for a protected bike lane in each direction. Further along, a dedicated protected bike lane should be installed on George's Quay. Similarly, cyclists are forced to share the bus lane, and when a cycle lane does pop up at the end of the street, it is unprotected and apparently unofficial row of parking spaces. However, the bus lane is also commonly blocked by parked vehicles, therefore most buses don't bother using it. So this is essentially wasted road space. With this gained space, 2 protected bike lanes could be installed. A contraflow bike lane could easily be installed on North Main Street with a few wands and bollards. North Main Street seemingly has plenty of width for this, judging by the amount of cars that illegally park on either side of the road. Ideally, it would be completely pedestrianised, which is something that was realised back in 2019 when a partial collapse caused the street to be closed to traffic, allowing residents to fully enjoy the street. But a bit of NIMBYism has quashed any dreams of it becoming permanent. The contraflow bike lane on Liberty Street behind the courthouse just ends abruptly with this little raised shared space, often being rife for parking. This lane would ideally continue onto the junction with North Main Street and Castle Street. Although we currently have a vast cycle lane network in Cork, much of it is unprotected. In the last 2 years, as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic, many bike lanes around Cork City were given the segregated treatment by installing plastic bollards along them. Suffice to say, some are more permanent than others. Alternative efforts to make a cycle lane safer include clear and direct notice of right-of-way and design it to be more difficult for motorists to enter the bike lane. Let's now take a look at some examples of how this can be implemented to more cycle lanes in the city. The contraflow bike lane on Proby's Quay lacks a lot of protection. It allows motorists to cross over the lane when coming out across the green. Due to the fact this is a one-way street for general traffic, many drivers may only look in the direction traffic is coming from, not realising there may be cyclists coming from the opposite direction. Currently, this is the only sign warning motorists of the bike lane. But it's hard to understand what this means, especially when it's not visible.
This could be fixed by making the junction a raised table and giving it a better sign, so that drivers must stop before proceeding across the table when it is safe to do so. If you were to follow this bike lane and turn left across the Southgate Bridge, you would come to another problem area. In the last year, there has been issues with illegally parked vehicles on this section of the bike lane, and the council rectified this by installing more bollards. However, recently there has been problems with taxis and delivery vehicles and even buses parking up on the unprotected section of the bike lane just outside this new apartment complex. On this particular day, I saw this vehicle parked here. This is equally as dangerous as the issue on Proby's Quay, as the bike lane is contraflow, meaning any cyclist that comes face to face with an illegally parked vehicle must swerve out onto the live road and face head-on traffic. The southbound lane on Brian Bruce Street is also unprotected, while the previously contraflow northbound lane, now a withflow northbound lane, was previously the safer option for cyclists travelling southbound. Therefore, cyclists felt safer cycling the wrong way along a protected lane instead of the right way on an unprotected one. So it seems, now excuse my ignorance here, but it seems like the obvious solution would be to provide protection in both directions.
A currently contentious junction that needs protection is at Albert Quay and Kennedy Quay. It is common for motorists to continue straight from Albert Quay onto Kennedy Quay and cross over the cycle lane without giving way to cyclists who are following the lane onto the Victoria Road. This can easily be protected by emphasising the cycle lane along the junction and needing motorists to make more of a left turn onto Kennedy Quay as opposed to continuing straight. Now, by naming these, it's not to say there aren't any more bike lanes that could be improved. Because honestly, the way bike lanes are designed in Cork is crap and a lot to be desired. There's a lot of bike lanes that could do with a bit of TLC, and even a lot that can do with a total redesign, like the bike lane on Curra Road by Turner's Cross. I mean, look at this. The next category I will look at goes beyond bike infrastructure and means redesigning the entire traffic flow. This is the kind of thing that would have to go through intensive consultation, so would be unlikely to be considered as quick wins. Let's first go back to North Main Street. The left turn on Adelaide Street could be banned. Instead, the whole of North Main Street becoming southbound, bar the bike lane I mentioned earlier of course, meaning cyclists trying to travel from the Northgate Bridge onto North Main Street and further south can just go straight through the lights at the Gate Cinema instead of following the same traffic route all the way around. Even better, this small section of North Main Street could be completely pedestrianised, with filtered permeability at the junction, meaning only cyclists and pedestrians could travel through it. Similarly, filtered permeability could be implemented on Union Quay. Recently, Cork City Council have improved outdoor dining features for bars along Union Quay. However, these umbrellas are on the other side of a live road. If filtered permeability was implemented, this area would become more of a public realm and the quay would be more pleasurable to walk along, while also filling in the gap between the cycle tracks on Parnell Bridge and Anglesey Street. Now, another quay that could benefit from this, or even partial pedestrianisation, is Sullivan's Quay. I know it might seem like quite a radical suggestion, but other than moving traffic from George's Quay to French's Quay, there aren't much other benefits from it being open to traffic. It is one of the rare tree-lined quays in Cork that would be very beautiful with additional greening by adding more trees and planters. Due to the one-way system on the bridges, traffic that would usually travel along this quay would instead be diverted across Parliament Bridge, left down South Mall, along Grand Parade to Washington Street and down South Main Street and then across the Southgate Bridge. Currently, there are two segregated cycle lanes at different parts of the quay. If a cyclist was travelling eastbound from French's Quay along the contraflow lane on Sullivan's Quay, they would be forced to cross Nanonagle Bridge as there is no infrastructure facilitating this movement further down Sullivan's Quay. However, at this section of the street, a withflow lane allows cyclists to travel westbound, but this ends at the same point by Nanonagle Bridge. If cars were restricted along the quay, it would facilitate safe movement in each direction for bike users. Now, there is a lot of general bike infrastructure that could be implemented citywide, like installing cycle route signs network or fixing traffic light cycles to give priority to pedestrians and cyclists, like the lights at Albert Quay.
Or more bike ramps up steps, similar to the one that was recently installed by the Shaky Bridge and Sunday as well.
Because Cork is so hilly, there are a lot of steps that could benefit from this, like at Shandon or St Finbar Street. A new secure indoor bike park. Up until last year, there was a bike rack installed in the disused shopping centre on North Main Street. However, that was removed due to the COVID testing and vaccine centre going into the old Dunn stores there. Yet, there hasn't been any more open since, and with the amount of vacant shop fronts in the city, this seems like a no-brainer. Both the city and county councils have installed public repair stations along cycle routes throughout Cork. However, there is definitely demand for more of these, and they could be better serviced, as any time I've tried to use them, either the pump is broken or it's missing tools. Surely repairing a pump would be a drop in the ocean of the budget. Cycling infrastructure in Cork could learn a lot from that in other European cities. Like these footrests by traffic lights in Copenhagen, meaning it's easier to start cycling once the light changes, or bins that are angled for cyclists to use, which remind me of this recycling cage along the Tramore River Greenway. I'd like to think this was the intentional use, but I doubt it.
So that was the list of the quick wins I think could have been achieved since August 22. Have any of them been made since? No, not really. Despite the fact I didn't make my thoughts public until now, I don't think I was going to sway the decision makers in Cork City Council. I set out making this video because, well, I've noticed problems with our infrastructure in Cork, but this has made me realise that public opinion matters, and that the call back in August from Eamon Ryan should have invited the public to come forward with suggestions for improvements, as we're the ones that use the infrastructure every day. When a surplus is made available to a council, that this is the perfect opportunity to listen to those suggestions and put that into practice. Like recently, this curb was evened out. This was all because of a friend of mine living in the building nearby and realising this was inaccessible. This led to attention being brought to it on Twitter, and it worked. Look at it now. No doubt this benefited from the active travel surplus. I started out the video by giving the figures from 2021 and saying they might reflect on the figures for the 2023 funding. Well, it has, because the allocated funding dropped from 309 million in 2021 to 290 million in 2023. Now, I think I'll do a part 2 to this video, reflecting more on this drop and the projects that were named for 2023. But if anything, this has shown me that if there's funding available for projects, you should just claim it. Because if you don't, it might not be there next year. But also that the public must make their voices heard if they want to see improvements made locally.